Hello and welcome to Unstoppable Tales of the Phoenix and the Phoenix and Fireweeds. I'm Lisa Shea, our host. I'm sitting with somebody very, very special to me, Siddiqi Ray-Cunningham, all the way over in another country.
New Zealand.
Siddiqi is a very special guest. I just got to spend an entire year in a mentorship program with her. I am, we were joking before we started. I'm so nervous because I care and I want to do a good job and make sure that I really want to ask you about you, because you're a very multi-dimensional, very powerful being of light. And your program, of course, is phenomenal, jam-packed, so much information. And I would not be able to do what I'm doing right now if it weren't for all I learned from you. You've been instrumental in so many of our lives in creating us to feel seen. And in that feeling seen, then I'm able to see myself. I've done, we are afforded this opportunity to do so much inside work, which just naturally kind of effervescently helps us to be seen on the outside. You've done a lot with your life. You've been a lot of places. You've done a lot of incredible work, Dalai Lama, Navy SEALs. I could go on. You've done, soul portrait. You're a photographer extraordinaire. You are a visibility expert. So you don't get, I'm sure you didn't get where you were just snapping your fingers, right? Right. How did it happen? Were there challenges? Did you set off to be who you are right now? Or tell us a little bit about how you got to be where you are.
Oh,
whatever.
Where I'm in what sense? Because there's so many ways I could go with that. So I'm open to answering any sense of it.
I know you're very vocal about, probably I think this is what needs to be said, because I think we're all looking to tell our truth. I think we're all looking to unmute ourselves. We as women can go, through the cracks, especially after a certain age, and just sort of disappear. And it's very hard for us to be visible when we're in our most wisest time of our life, which is really interesting. So I know that you have a movement, you tell us about that. You have a movement in the thread of your work or your personal, how you see your purpose through the eyes of something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So how I got here with my personal purpose. Yeah. And starting this movement of women unmuting themselves, especially using social media to do it. I think all of our life paths, and I know this is true for you in your own way, it all starts with some kind of original wound that we have in childhood that we have no idea sets us on this path, this trajectory of trying to overcome that wound. So for me, just really briefly, what it looked like was 2 parents in medical school on food stamps, trying to raise 2 kids. They called me monster baby because I was so demanding. I was, if you look back, I was hyperactive. And what I really wanted was I wanted attention. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard. And I have these 2 very sleep deprived parents with very little resources internally and externally. And so I constantly felt undernourished in terms of look at me, listen to me, pay attention to me, have presence with me. And that was a reoccurring theme of my life. So it was no wonder that I ended up behind the camera, trying to see into other people, like what makes them tick? What's the truth for them? And I just had this insatiable need to look deeply at things. My first work was in documentary filmmaking. I started that in high school in New York City. I went to kind of like a FAME high school, and then I went to NYU Film School, and it was always in search of the truth, in search of a deeper truth. And so I spent 30 years in corporate America, climbing the ranks with the men to become a commercial corporate photographer, which at the time I was always the first woman on staff at Macy's, Dayton Hudson Marshall Fields, Target, Associated Press. And I was always competing for the attention, always competing for the accomplishments. And as a result, and I'm simplifying this, but as a result, I created a lot of discord externally. And when you compete with men in a male dominated field, you are going to get a lot of pushback. And so the culmination of that pushback ended up in a lawsuit. And I think if you have this wound around being seen, that you're going to spend your whole life trying to accomplish what you think you need to accomplish and be to get that original attention that was lacking. And so, you know, you're a therapist, you know this, the wound around my father, and I want him to be proud of me. You know, he's this world-renowned plastic and reconstructive surgeon. He heads departments. He's still working at 82. I'm like, I want him to see me. I want him to love me. I want him to be proud of me. And I want him to say it. Of course, that drives everything. We're not conscious of it until we go on that deep, dark, soul-searching journey that starts with a lot of crash bangs in life. And so what happened is corporate America, massive soul-crushing discrimination by the men, like hazing. Just you couldn't even believe that this was happening at a Fortune 100 company. I mean, it was just so, I was just sitting there going, is this really happening? 2003 through 2009. Is this really even possible that this kind of stuff is still going down in corporate America? Well, yes, it is. And I realized that I had really muted myself, like toughen up. They used to say, drink a cup of concrete and harden up, and right. And just play the game. And it didn't work because I'm really sensitive, which is one of my gifts, but it felt like a curse at the time. I have a really thin skin. I cry really easily. And, you know, it was really challenging. And so I left corporate America. I went to work for the Kennedys. I saw what power and money and a name and fame do to a person. And I set off on this trajectory of really using the camera as a tool to see more deeply into people as a result of a spiritual experience I had with the Dalai Lama. I had a spiritual awakening, and I was gifted the ability to see people's souls. And I combined that ability with photography and created the soul portrait. And I did that. And I did hundreds and hundreds of these life-changing experiences of people actually getting to see an image and hear a recording of their higher self documented, right, in a photograph. And then COVID happened. And I ended up on the other side of the world. And all the while, this conversation was always going on with the women in front of my camera from way back in the days of, you know, shooting fashion models for the cover of magazines and stuff. The conversation was always, I'm not thin enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not good looking enough. Can you make me different? And it didn't matter whether it was literally my grandmother or my mother or my sister or my best friend or a client or a supermodel. Everybody had the same conversation. I was like, what is going on? And I realized we don't see ourselves clearly. And because we don't see ourselves clearly, this is my long-winded answer to your question. We are not stepping into our power. We are not stepping into our full expression. We're not really being seen and being heard because we have so much fear around that, especially as women. And so I was doing this work before COVID, but when my main tool of the camera got taken away, I had to really do some soul searching of what more is there for me to do on this planet. I think COVID has been a great, well, it's been exhausting, but it's also been a great time to start asking the deeper question of like, if I'm still here after all this, why am I here? And what is uniquely mine to do? And what I saw was there's this whole movement of women that are highly accomplished, highly educated, highly skilled, and have done more soul searching and personal development than women have ever done in the history of humankind. And I was like, well, what are we doing with all that? Because the world needs it. And that's what started the movement of like this tap on the shoulder. And I was like, no, not me. I don't want to work with women. I don't want to do groups. I don't want to talk about this. Why me? I had such massive failures in this department, and the universe just kept knocking and knocking. And finally I was like, I'll try. And that's where it came from.
Mm.
Nobody ever feels qualified to start a movement, and nobody thinks that they should be the one. But when you get the tap, it's like,
Oh, right.
either you say, oh, this is coming to me for a reason, and I don't have to do it all on my own.
Mhm.
Or you just say, I'm passing because I feel I'm still stuck in that wound. So that's how it all started. I hope that was a good answer.
Beautiful answer. Absolutely beautiful. Wow. Thank you. I felt everything along the way, the bumps, the joys, the paternalistic, male dominated. I was in the food business before I changed career. So I know very much about what it feels like to be in a male dominated field, especially back when I was in it. So much of what you said is profound and important. You're able to champion women to find their own power. And it feels like that's another whole movement of, why aren't we in it? Where do we find, how do we keep it? And what do we do with it? There's a lot of conversation around that, what does it mean to be in our power? And so that implies we haven't been.
Oh yeah, no.
Haven't been.
No.
So
right,
that's a big deal, So yeah, I'm all about women, women empowering women and holding the lantern for each other to walk these steps that are brave. You're one brave mama. So for our audience, what would you tell someone who doesn't feel seen, maybe still has, wound, coming from the wounded place versus an empowered place, wants to be seen, wants to be stepping into her power? What do you tell her or him? I think it's, gender aside, it doesn't really matter. I think being empowered is for all of us. I want everybody on the planet to feel empowered. What would you say to somebody?
How to feel empowered?
If somebody's listening and they're like, well, I want that. I want to feel seen. I want what she has. I want what she has. What do people do?
I wish that there was a magic wand that we could wave and just be seen and be heard and be ourselves, because it sounds so simple, doesn't it? It sounds so simple.
Right.
And it is simple, but it's not easy. What I know is that most of the women that I deal with have a really, really strong inner critic, a voice of judgment that shows up then in behavior of perfectionism, which leads to paralysis. They're afraid of being found out as a fraud.
Right.
So there's a lot of reasons why you can't just go out and stand up and speak up and shine your light like we want to. And we've invested in, the programs and the tools and the certifications and the degrees, trying to get ready to feel that power because we know it's in us. It's like this seed. But meanwhile, the whole parable of which wolf are you feeding?
Right.
And
right.
The wolf that you feed grows. And when we go off and we seek that kind of external validation and structure in order to feel prepared, that's when we're still feeding the powerless voice of the wolf. And so my best words of wisdom, I don't know if they're advice, but words of wisdom are to just know you're never going to feel like it. You don't get to feeling powerful. First, you have to be shaking in your shoes, scared, just absolutely terrified. And get the community, get the support, get the mentorship, get the structure to do it anyway. Because that's the only way to access your power. You can't believe that you have it until you try and dabble with it. It's terrifying. I wish there was an easier way.
I know.
But it's just a practice. It's a muscle.
Right. And as I'm listening, I'm like, yes. At the same time, what has kept me from wanting to be seen or allowing myself to be seen is the coping mechanism of needing to hide for safety, right? That egoic right? Which is really steeped in shame. So I would be remiss if I didn't bring up one of my favorite topics, which nobody wants to talk about, and probably we all need to talk about, is how much shame we've experienced or taken on or been shamed or shaming somebody else, right? I don't want to go deep into that. It feels to me like part of what you're saying is feel the shame, feel your feelings with support, talk about them, get them out, look at it, get it in black and white, share it, right? Because usually when we look all this stuff and we think it's beady little eyes, it usually runs from us, as soon as these fears are named, or the shame or the hiding or the this or the that, or anything that has kept all that wounding, as soon as we name it, most of the power is taken out of it. And then we can take actionable steps to get out in front of it. Does that resonate?
Yeah, it resonates. I think it's always useful to get really curious with shame. I mean, I know exactly the experience of shame. I can tell you what it feels like physically. It's a shot of adrenaline.
Yeah.
That just like my adrenaline just spikes and I start to feel dizzy and lightheaded. I feel like I've been punched in the gut. My chest closes, my throat closes, and I'm in this shame reaction. And so part of what you've experienced in my program is scientifically backed methods to kind of help rewire the nervous system and the brain, because you are going to get attacked by shame, and the difference, like you are going to get triggered, right? Left, right, and center.
100%. So I love that you brought that up. So let's, before we end, tell us about and I don't know if you feel comfortable telling about your secret sauce. I know you have a couple.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You have more than one sauce. I've used them. They're amazing. What are your favorite?
So the tools of transformation are, we can't just think our way out of shame. It doesn't work. We can't even talk our way out of shame. We need to presence it, right? And we need to get some very real tools to help us with all the ganglia of nerves that are associated with shame. Right. And the whole domino reaction that happens when we're in shame, which is the thing that keeps us from being seen, being heard, showing up, sharing our light, making a contribution, making an impact. It's all shame. Shame is shame, fear. And so I kept signing up for these programs, Lisa, and hitting this resistance. And people would be like, well, just do a social media video or just post once a week. And it sounded so simple. And I literally couldn't do it. And I got really curious about the resistance. So resistance is the indicator of shame. And having worked at Mayo Clinic and having done a research study that was mindfulness based, I realized I need to bring a really heavy dose of mindfulness into the process. And I also need to go and find scientifically proven techniques to help with resistance. And so I use a lot of binaural meditations, journaling, mindfulness-based practices. And then I have some like woo-woo magic stuff like rapid recode. And I really went on this quest to find, if you're going to sign up for a business coaching program and you're not going to do it and you get stuck in shame, it's just money down the drain. So we have to address the shame. We have to address the resistance. And I have been absolutely profoundly impacted myself in this quest for how we release the resistance and move into our power. Right. And that's the movement. It's like, how as women do we release the shame so that we can step into our power, have a voice, and make an impact? And, this is going to be a lifelong journey for me of finding tools that I can practice myself and then say, hey, this has really worked for me. Yeah. And that's what I'm excited about, is you can't think your way out of it. You can't talk your way out of it, but you can love yourself out of it. Yeah. But to love yourself, community, you need support, you need structure, you need a mentor. And the results are amazing, aren't they?
100%. Yeah. And I really believe, and we'll end with this, but I really, and I just heard this the other day again, and it comes again and again, is I don't have a choice. I need to serve my purpose. And part of that is shining brightly. Part of that is shining brightly for others to see. We're meant to shine. We have to shine. we don't have really a choice. We must do it. So that
Well,
takes a
yeah,
lot
the choice is to stay in the darkness, right? And to
right.
stay in the perpetual state of powerlessness and misery and
Right.
suffering. That is a choice.
And we can make that choice. Right.
And I did it.
Right. I did it for a really long time. Yeah. Yeah,
long
exactly.
time.
So part of why I love that though, is it's inspiring to think it's bigger than me. It helps me deal with my gunk, right? It's much bigger than me. It's bigger. It's serving a much, much, much larger, like your movement. Using the word movement is global. So yeah. So
I mean, you know, why not throw in all the help that we can get? Because Lord knows if we're going to address this for ourselves and for others, that we need all the help that we can get. And that's really what my message is. Like, in order to do this movement, I need help, because it's not about me. It's about us stepping into our power and really doing our work, serving, and actually using our businesses as a platform for spiritual growth. I think that's really important. That's a whole nother talk, but thank you for having this conversation. I'm so proud of you. I'm so impressed. You have come so far, and you're really amazing. And everybody needs to go sign up for one of your groups. If you're in shame, literally, if you're in shame and you're stuck, Lisa has some incredible groups that will help you with that from her trained perspective as a therapist. And so I highly recommend that to everybody. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking this time to spend with me today. I know you're really busy, and thank you.
I'm very proud of you. Very impressed by you.
Oh,
I love you.
I'm sending you giant hugs. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Can't wait to see you next time.